The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. There was a wedding at Cana in Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus and his disciples were also invited to the wedding. When the wine ran short, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, how does your concern affect me? My hour has not yet come." His mother then said to the servers, "Do whatever he tells you." Now there were 6 stone water jars there for Jewish ceremonial washings, each holding about 30 gallons. And Jesus told them, "Fill the jars with water." So they filled them to the brim. And then he told them, "Draw some out for me and take it to the head waiter." So they took it. And when the head waiter tasted the water that had become wine without knowing where it came from, and although the servers who had drawn the water knew, the head waiter called the bridegroom over and said, "Everyone serves good wine first, and then when people have drunk freely, an inferior one. But you have kept the good wine until now." And Jesus did this as the beginning of his signs at Cana in Galilee, and so revealed his glory, and his disciples began to believe him. The Gospel of the Lord. Okay, do whatever he tells you. Do whatever he tells you. I was looking for a song that might capture my sense of mood or thoughts that come from my reflection on this gospel, and I really couldn't come up with anything. The top 10 is back to some old songs that have been floating around this year, and they're a little bit either simplistic or escapist, in my opinion. At least the top couple. There's a song with Bruno Mars and Lady Gaga. "I'll Die Smiling," I think it is, and it's a nice sentiment about real commitment in love, but it doesn't say much more about where you go with that love and what you do with it. Typical of kind of a Bruno Mars song, kind of a good beat, nice music, not a complicated or deep thought. The other one, of course, is the bar song, Tipsy, I guess, by Shabuzi, and that one's like, if you're worried and have troubles, then hit the bar. That's not helpful. And I feel like maybe that's kind of my mood, and maybe much of the mood of the nation right now, as we get through the winter, as we look at really horrific things going on in the world, disasters in our own country. We're overwhelmed a little bit by the news because some of what we're dealing with is complicated, it's huge, and there's a way in which sometimes our own survival mechanisms back us off and just don't kind of go into something that gives us a little escapism. So I'm not arguing against a moment where we take a break, but I am arguing for the fact that we are dealing with some big and complex things going on in our world, and ignoring them is not the response. Ignoring them is hugely problematic, in my opinion. And as we go into this new year, we're already into it, as we look at some major changes coming about, maybe even some pretty chaotic changes, especially coming from our government, where we're just going to be trying out some kinds of policies and see if they work, might be causing all kinds of harm and horror, to be frank. I think you and I might want to say, where can I be grounded in the midst of all of this, in something that allows me to have a sense of myself with God, so that I can take it on as I can and make my contribution where I can for both myself, my loved ones, but also my community, both writ small and writ large. I think that's kind of the question and the thing that I'm thinking about right now in my life. Today's scene is this very intimate, familial thing, a wedding. Jesus is just a guest, so is his mother. And I love how his mother realizes he doesn't want to deal with this. He doesn't want to get involved, but he will, because of who he is. It reminds me a little bit of my own mother's tactics at getting me to do something without arguing with me, without trying to push me or complain. She would often enough, her technique, of course, was to infuse a little indirectly, fuse some guilt, right? She'd ask me to do something. I say, well, you really can't get involved in that. All right, I want to do that right now. That's not my thing. She said, okay, oh, that's all right. I'll do it. I'll never forget those lines. I'll do it. So, of course, I would walk away feeling really guilty, and then I'd say, okay, I guess I'll do it. Something inside of me, call it conscience, stimulated by very strategic guilt, and it worked. My conscience led me to say, of course I'll do it. My mother knew it would work every time. She didn't argue with me again. She wasn't going to lay out some kind of shaming. She was just going to infuse a little bit of healthy guilt that stimulated my conscience and motivated me to do the right thing. And my mother was really good at it, I'll assure you of that. Jesus' mother does the same thing. She knows he'll do what is right. It's not the biggest problem in the world, and yet she's trying to make sure that this couple who's getting married doesn't have anything impinging upon their full joy, their joy at this great event, and everybody else's for that matter. And so this is where his glory is revealed, in this really ordinary social event, this great celebration of life and commitment at a wedding where Jesus is willing to make a difference and his glory begins to be revealed in a small but important and beautiful and joyful way. And then, of course, the rest of his ministry just keeps opening up, stimulated by his mother knowing who he is and that he'll do the right thing. Well, maybe you and I can look at each other and say, okay, let us be confident that we know how to do the right thing. We might think sometimes that each of us is misguided. I know for a fact that I look at a certain percentage of the country today and I feel like they have some kind of serious damage to their own sense of self-respect, and so they're willing to sign on to policies and actions in our world that I think are deeply wrong and horrific in some cases, that are going to cause immense harm to innocent people. However, I still believe that those same people whose self-respect is so deeply damaged that they would follow policies that are deeply affronting human rights and human dignity, I still believe that they know what's the right thing. And I still believe that you and I can have encounters with each other and them and whomever else that allow us to push each other in subtle but important ways, that call out from ourselves that right thing, maybe with a little bit of guilt, certainly with a little bit of expectation that we know deep within us by conscience and by soul what is right, and that good people will respond. So friends, I think today's gospel, this encounter of Jesus and his mother, allows you and I to not be escapist, but to have hope in those interactions we can have with each other that allow us to encourage each other, maybe sometimes in subtle, maybe even like my mother, a little bit of manipulation, good manipulation, what I would call healthy manipulation, because it's calling out the best of who we are. And it allows us then to encourage each other, to push each other a little bit, maybe a lot, into responding to the right thing, to doing the right thing. And in the week ahead, the weeks to come, we may need to do that with each other and for each other in serious ways. So friends, I don't have a song this week, and I'm not willing to just look at something that allows me to escape, because we got big problems and we can't keep having simplistic answers. We can't keep responding out of some sense of wounded self-respect and thinking and buying into simplistic and sometimes silly responses to complex problems. Instead, I think we need to be inspired by this gospel today to lead us forward and into a way where we can encourage and maybe push each other into what action we need to do to recreate those moments where we can establish a sense of justice in order to add to and contribute to the creation of God's reign of love here in our midst by God's grace, our good effort, and maybe our own little ways in which we push each other and expect each other to do the right thing. Amen.